like to, I guess, just kind of bring us up to date. What's happening in Mexico City? We kind of spelled out what workers want, but this didn't happen overnight. This had to build up, and I guess exploded into this kind of mass demonstration.
Well, the situation living in Mexico City again is that today these protests have been in 36 points and highways all over Mexico, very strongly around Mexico City and in 14 states all over Mexico, no? So it has not been only in Mexico and around Mexico City, but also in other places. And as it looks like, there have been some dialogues with the federal government, but these protests will take some additional time. At least we have been informed, at least one more day. This is tomorrow.
Enrique, it seems like it is pretty well coordinated if you have the transportation workers as well as the farmers. Let's talk about the potential outcome of these demonstrations. It could influence food supply chains, not just in Mexico, but for international markets that rely on Mexican agricultural exports.
Well, the pressure for the federal government is enormous, no? You have to imagine that, yes, good parts of Mexico City have been blocked, but these blockades have been relatively tolerant, which means it has not been 100% blocked, but they have allowed for passing trucks and cars very slowly, no? But this could, if this continues, as you mentioned, this could very strongly affect Mexico City and international markets.
I find it interesting that the demonstrators say they want more government support for these important sectors like agriculture, because that does mean so much to Mexico's bottom line. So does this signal an unhappiness with the way the trade deal between Canada, Mexico, and the United States, the USMCA, has spelled out? And what do you think it means for the future of that agreement, because they're trying to hammer out a new pact right now?
The general request from particularly from farm workers is to have a federal strategy vis-a-vis the agricultural sector in Mexico that includes several of the issues you mentioned, and including also more security in Mexico's transportation. And so additional institutions have participated in this protest. No, the situation can get, if this continues throughout the week or even longer, can have enormous repercussions all over Mexico, including in Mexico City. And yes, one of the requests of these farm institutions is that Mexico has become one of the main world importers, particularly imports of grain from the United States, which is highly subsidized. No? Yeah. So Mexico is importing huge quantities and volume of grains, different types of products within the agricultural sector, and this is affecting the agricultural sector in Mexico today.
You know, it's got to be brutal for the relatively newly elected president, Claudia Sheinbaum. She has to deal with the Trump tariffs, the cartels, and the trouble that they bring daily to Mexico, and now this exploding difficulty. So how is the Sheinbaum government responding to these protests?
Well, her main motto in the last, since she began, has been to have a dialogue. She has attempted, I believe successfully, to have a dialogue with the Trump administration, with lots of different groups within Mexico. There has been already dialogues with farm workers in the last weeks. It was again highlighted to have dialogues today. Apparently, the farm institutions will accept this dialogue tomorrow. So this is the main motto of Claudia Sheinbaum, and I believe it's the only way to deal with these domestic, international, and global issues that will come up not only 2025, but also next year in the negotiations regarding the USMCA.
You know, Enrique, here on Global Business, we did a lot last week on the issue of water and climate change, and some nations facing day zero, like Iran right now. You have to know that big parts of Mexico are just dealing with tremendous water shortage. So what role do you believe that climate change and other similar issues are playing in these farmers' demands?
Well, one of the demands is a very critical stance of the agricultural sector vis-à-vis a proposed new law on water. The new law on water attempts to regulate water concessions. In some cases, these concessions can be inherited within families and groups, etc. And the attempt is to have a more transparent regulation regarding water, considering, again, very tough environmental changes, particularly in the north of Mexico. This, again, has been criticized very strongly by these farm workers, and this is part of the ongoing discussion within Mexico.